Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Valerie Navarrete. I am on the board of the Miami Beach United, and I am the chair of forums and events. And we are all, in behalf of the board, we are all very happy that you are here, and we are here to serve you. Also, I would like to give a shout out for the venue from South Beach Group. This is the Women's Club, and this is a beautiful venue for weddings and parties and baby showers. So contact Jessica, her card is outside. Thank you very much, South Beach Group. And with that, I would like to introduce you to our president, the Miami Beach United president, Madam Claire McCord. You guys can clap.
Thank you. It's clapping for Valerie. Thank you, Valerie. Valerie is such an asset, and she's a Miami Beach United treasure. I want to say good evening to everybody, and thank you so much for attending our event. Thank you for being members. If you are members, if you just joined tonight, welcome to Miami Beach United. We have a wonderful event today. The Biscayne Bay issues are something that's top of everyone's mind. And I think our panelists tonight are experts that have volunteered to come here and speak with us. As you know, Miami Beach United has a very strong informational and educational mission. We believe that an educated, informed electorate is a powerful electorate. And so besides acting as advocates, we also want to make sure that we provide events like this so that we can fully inform you, the residents of Miami Beach, about critical issues like Biscayne Bay. So before introducing our panel, I will also let you know that we are video recording this event, and the video should be up within a week or so after the event. So if someone has missed the event, have them check our website, and they can watch the event there. I also want you to know that the panelists and Louis Aguirre, who should be appearing shortly, who is our celebrity moderator, have been given issues and questions that came from residents, either in meetings here. I know quite a few residents had questions and topics they wanted to discuss at our annual meeting in February, and also at neighborhood meetings. We've heard quite a few issues about pollution, about the mooring field, about reckless boat traffic, and so on. So we know that Biscayne Bay is a treasure and that our treasure is in trouble. And our four experts tonight know a lot about the trouble because they have worked diligently to try to find solutions. First, we have at the end of the table, the far end, we have Irela Begay. Irela Begay. Irela is Miami-Dade County's first Chief Bay Officer, and her department focuses on all water quality issues, policies, and appropriations related to the health and recovery of Biscayne Bay. She acts as an advisor to the county mayor and the county commission and is a liaison between county departments, county boards, external agencies, stakeholder groups, local, state, and federal governments, and that's a lot. Ms. Biscayne chaired the Miami-Dade County Biscayne Bay Task Force, leading the development of a report, the Biscayne Bay Recovery Plan, which some of you may be familiar with, which has recommendations to improve the bay health and provide for long-term recovery and restoration. She's a former governing board member of South Florida Water Management District, where she was vice chair, and she has also served as chair of the Miami River Commission. Thank you very much for coming. Second, we have our own Amy Knowles, who is a, yay, thank you for coming, Amy. Amy is a City of Miami Beach Chief Resilience Officer, and she is the Director of Environment and Sustainability for the city. Amy works closely with the Holistic Resilience Leadership Team to implement policies and projects to build a more resilient Miami Beach. She focuses on integrating climate preparedness, planning with nature-based solutions, and infrastructure. Ms. Knowles recently helped the city secure $60 million in resilience funding for projects ranging from dune restoration to infrastructure and led the city's first vulnerability assessment for stormwater program. She recently also launched the Fight the Flood program, a property adaptation program to incentivize private property owners in resilience. She works in partnership with Miami-Dade County, the City of Miami, and the Miami Foundation to implement Resilient 305, a shared resilience strategy initiative, and serves on the North American Steering Committee for Global Resilient Cities Network. Preserving and restoring Biscayne Bay is the #1 action in that strategy, and Amy works to implement ordinances and projects to protect and restore Biscayne Bay. She is the city's point person on environmental permitting for Miami Beach mooring field in Biscayne Bay as well. Thank you. Dave Dobler, if you've ever been involved as a resident activist in some way with Biscayne Bay or water quality, you probably know Dave Dobler. He is a South Beach resident for 13 years and works as a clean water activist and a Biscayne Bay advocate. Dave is a former, yay, give him another hand. He's working for us all the time. He's a former chair of the City of Miami Beach Sustainability Committee, current vice chair of the City Marine and Waterfront Protection Authority, and current member of the County Biscayne Bay Watershed Management Advisory Board, another mouthful. Steering Committee, sorry, I forgot the end of that. He's a member of the Biscayne Bay Marine Health Coalition. Residents, of course, will know him if they participated in any cleanup organized by his organization, volunteercleanup.org, which has helped coordinate over 3,000 cleanups and 600,000 pounds of debris from Biscayne Bay. And last but not least at all is our scientific water expert, Dr. Helena Solo Gabriel, who is a professor in the Department of Chemical, Environmental, and Materials Engineering at the University of Miami, where she teaches courses in water quality, environmental measurements, and engineering microbiology. Dr. Solo Gabriel's research has focused on evaluating the relationship between the environment and human health. Her research spans diverse areas, including evaluating the human health impacts of metals and pesticides and evaluating human health impacts of microbial contaminants in coastal zones. Dr. Solo Gabriel has evaluated causes of microbial pollution in coastal zones throughout the state of Florida and targeted studies in Monroe, Miami-Dade, Broward, and St. Lucie counties. She is currently leading the University of Miami team with identifying sources of bacteria in the Parkview Canal in Miami Beach. Dr. Solo Gabriel, thank you so much. I'm not sure if we actually have our guest moderator here yet. Tanya? I guess he's not. Right. Maybe while we're waiting for Louis to arrive, we could go down the row and have each panelist maybe just give us a minute on your work with Biscayne Bay and what you think is most important for us to know about you and what you do. Dr. Solo Gabriel?
Well, thank you for this opportunity to be here. It's truly an honor. And currently, my research focus is looking at microorganisms in coastal areas. And the area that I find the most fascinating is the coastal zone, that swash zone, where the water comes up, washes up and back, and trying to understand under what conditions the microbes may leave that sand or come into the sand. And I've been given the honor to work in the Parkview Island Canal to understand what the sources of bacteria are to that system. That system has elevated levels of a bacteria that we use to indicate fecal contamination called enterococci. The levels are high, and we've been focusing on trying to identify where it's coming from. And we've recently identified that it's coming predominantly through the stormwater conveyance system. And when it rains, all the runoff that comes off from the rain ends up going through the stormwater conveyance system and carrying all the material on the streets straight to the canal. And as a result, the levels are very elevated, and we've learned that the stormwater system in Miami, in this area in Miami Beach, was constructed back in the 1930s, and essentially is a conduit. More modern stormwater conveyance systems have a treatment system for treating the first flush, or the first inch, that first pulse of water that comes through typically is treated in more modern systems. And so the system in this area of Miami Beach definitely needs an upgrade in terms of stormwater. So yeah, that's what I've been focusing on lately in this particular area.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, so hi, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here, especially with other, like, really, really impressive people. Like, to have me on the panel, it's, I'm really happy to be here. So I got my start just as somebody who enjoys Biscayne Bay. I was kayaking around and started picking up trash as I was floating by, and discovered the stormwater systems are a major conveyance of not only of trash, basically. About 6 years ago, I was recruited by our good friend Luis Rodriguez, who used to run Ecom. He's moved to Brazil, but he pulled together a ragtag group of people to hold a Biscayne Bay Marine Health Summit. And that was basically just sounding the alarms for a dying Biscayne Bay. I had the privilege of working with Irela, who was also on the steering committee with that, when she was just another citizen like us. And so we ended up putting together a summit, and originally my whole thought process was like, okay, we got to do something about the plastic. But then as I started getting more involved in this, I started realizing that there's a lot of stuff that I can't see. And it is the problem, you know, when I talk about trash, it's easy for us to see with our own eyes and realize that it's, wow, that's not right, that doesn't belong. And the more I've learned is that there are things that I cannot see. Bacteria, nutrients, and basically anything that happens at the street ends up in Biscayne Bay after it rains. And so, you know, my ask of everybody is to just raise awareness about your impact on Biscayne Bay. And, oh, there's Louis. Hey, Louis. We're winging with that here, brother. You know, I've been a clean water advocate, just really focused not only on plastic, but looking more holistically about water, because water moves, and what happens inland happens in Biscayne Bay. What happens in City of Miami affects City of Miami Beach, and so we need to be thinking about working with our partners, other cities, the county, the municipalities, and increasing our design of stormwater pollution controls, as well as our maintenance of them. So that's kind of where I've been primarily focused.
Thank you, Dave. You want to take a quick minute, since I gave the others a minute, so.
Whatever works for you, Claire. I'm happy to. Well,
Quickly, and then one.
good evening, everyone, and then I know you all really want to hear from Louis. So my name again is Amy Knowles. I work for the City of Miami Beach. I started my career back when I was 21 years old, popping manholes in Miami-Dade County, believe it or not. And so when Dave talks about that underground infrastructure, a lot of times environmental protection and policy needs to be tied extremely closely with that infrastructure, because that's what's impacting our beautiful environment. And so it's very important to me, and the work that we do on Miami Beach, is that as we adapt our city to climate change, as we address our aging infrastructure, that we do it in a way that leaves Biscayne Bay better off. You know, Biscayne Bay is our backyard. It is an impaired water body, and it is so important that we are introducing green infrastructure back to this island. As we're building our seawalls, we're integrating living seawalls, adding more mangroves, still keeping the connection to the water, through those lookouts. But everything we do, really that frames the work that we do, and that's very important. We've also worked really hard at policies and ordinances in order to, again, restore the bay. And one of them I'm really, really proud of, and actually Lindsay Precht, my colleague and an assistant director, has implemented this program, is visiting every single construction site on Miami Beach and making sure they're following our new water quality ordinance, which means they cannot have runoff into the bay, they can't have runoff into the storm drains that leads to the bay, or the streets, or their neighbors' properties. And when we first started the program about 10 months ago, we had 80% in violation. 80% in violation. Yes, and honestly, the amount of fees we brought in immediately was just astounding. But something very special happened where a contractor working in one side of town called his construction site at the other side of town, and as we began to visit and educate, that number now is down to about 50%. So we're not there yet, but this is an immediate action that we're seeing. So that's just one of the things, and then finally I want to mention education. We have a We Heart Biscayne Bay campaign. We work very hard. We had a Yappy Hour. Hopefully some of you, came to see that. But our don't be rough on the bay, don't be trashy, don't fertilize the bay. That's really the cornerstone of just behavior change that we can all do. So that's very important to me and my team as well.
Thank you very much.
I'll be quick. Oh, thank you everyone for having me. It's great to be kind of like with my Bay family here. I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, I'm more of a political scientist, but my passion for Biscayne Bay started over 20 years ago when I had the honor of serving on the South Florida Water Management District under Jeb Bush's administration. And we talked here, some of us talked about canals and some of us talked about stormwater and, and how water moves through everything, it's just all connected. And so learning about moving water the right way and ensuring that that water quality is better is all really up to us. And it's all up to us on land to do the right thing. And policy does matter. And taking those kinds of actions, you made me so happy. You're doing it too. The county took similar actions 2 summers ago when we realized that there's just so much construction going on. And not everyone follows the rules. They cut around corners, and we know that. And so we started doing surprise inspections of these construction sites. And guess what? We found the same thing. We took a step further. We looked at our fines and our fine structure. Our penalties were so low; they were still stuck in the 80s. So, we were fining folks with $250 fines, which are ridiculous for development sites that are making tens and maybe hundreds of millions of dollars selling these condominiums. So we're taking those kinds of actions now. But as we'll talk further, a lot of the things that we're doing now on a fast track to help Biscayne Bay recover should have started 20 years ago, unfortunately. But we're doing it now, and we're working together, which is something that I had been praying for a very long time. So we're there.
Thank you. And now, to introduce Louis Aguirre is our own past president and current board member, Tanya Bach.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Bottle and a microphone.
Bottle and a microphone.
All right.
Okay. The bottle is not mine. It's for Louis. I just wanted to. Is there anybody here who doesn't know Louis Aguirre? Anybody who doesn't know that name, raise your hand. It's okay. It's not a shaming thing. Just gauging. Okay, so we'll do the proper introduction as well. But I just have to say, for context, I moved here over 20 years ago from Boston, and I knew I wasn't in Boston because I found this local news program called Deco Drive, and there was this really great anchor team, and they were smart and funny and sassy, and the guy was pretty good looking, actually. And the stories that they covered were just really not Boston stories. And who would have thunk, 20 years later, that same male half of the duo, Louis Aguirre, is now a multi-award winning journalist and our local hometown hero, who is a champion of environmental issues, specifically Don't Trash Our Treasure. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go check it out. He has done so much for environmental awareness raising, and he is such a pillar of the community. It is a thrill to introduce our very own Louis Aguirre.
Thank you for the kind words, Tanya. Yeah, we all gotta grow up sometime. I see so many beautiful, friendly faces in this room. It's so great. Yes, you said the words, Iruela. This is the Biscayne Bay family. So many of you are on there on the front lines every single day, every single weekend, every single moment, either at commission meetings or literally picking up trash and trying to make things better. Yeah, I'm not just a local television personality. I'm a Miami Beach resident. I lived in the same house 23 years ago, up the street here. I'm your friend, I'm your neighbor. You may see me screaming at the trash on the sidewalk. That's me walking my dogs. I do that every day as I walk into the beach. I pick up trash. And that really, for me personally, was my moment of awakening when I realized what was happening in my beloved Miami Beach. I watch over the waters like a worried mother watching over her kids. Every day I'm noticing, okay, what's the turbidity like, and does it smell weird? Is there trash in the water? And I watch over it. This isn't a job for me. This is personal. I grew up here. I'm a native son of Miami. Biscayne Bay, Miami Beach, it's my backyard. I care what happens. And so I'm grateful that Channel 10 has given me this platform to speak about this, because nobody else is, and it's important. So with that being said, we're going to get into it. I'm so happy that the panel introduced themselves. We can just start the important conversation that we need to have. We know about the state of the Bay. We know that we're at this very dangerous tipping point where if we don't act with urgency, with speed and scale, we will lose the beautiful seagrass ecosystem that we love with dolphins and manatees and sea turtles and sharks and rays and healthy fish stocks to one dominated by algae. We cannot let that happen. We won't let that happen, right? Right? We're not going to let that happen, right? Okay, we're going to let the panelists have the conversation. I know there might be some pressing questions from you, our beautiful audience members. I hope that we're going to cover everything within this discussion, but we really want to hear from them and have a spirited discussion here on stage. So that being said, I want to just get the check-in. I know that we had a Biscayne Bay report card that just came in 2 weeks ago. Barely passing, is that a fair assessment? It's basically C minus D, a lot of red, a lot of yellow, just a few green spots. If you haven't seen the Biscayne Bay report card, it's published on the Miami-Dade County website. You can look for it, and it goes down the whole list of what we're looking for, from phosphorus levels and nitrogen levels and chlorophylls and enteric oxide levels, seagrass die-off. So give it to us straight, Chief Bay Officer. How are we doing?
So I took this job, I just want to give a little shout out to my boss, Mayor Daniela Levine Cava. I took this job. She was very, very persuasive, and what got me to agree, because I was very happy doing what I was doing before, was I'm going to make the environment one of my top administrative goals, and so that makes a difference. Another goal of hers was to create a easy, friendly to understand Biscayne Bay report card. So we have, kind of color coded. Doesn't look good. These greens, forget it. Those were past years. Right now, it's fair and poor. And we kind of know that. We kind of know that because back in 2017, when Dave and I were, setting up that summit, it was a call to action because we started seeing that horrible die-off in the northern part of Biscayne Bay of the seagrass. And when seagrass goes, life goes. And so that was the first alarm, but out of sight, out of mind, right? You got to go down below the water, my beautiful mermaid, to see what's down there, to understand. So the average citizen isn't scuba diving in the bay every day, so they're not seeing that. So fast forward, our call to action was heard, and the commission set up the task force. I chaired the task force, and one of our recommendations was obviously, let's look at the water quality, let's look at these nutrient levels, why is the seagrass dying? And we developed a series of recommendations, delivered the report, and then we had that devastating fish kill. I think we all remember that and how horrific that was in August of 2020. And that was the second alarm, but it was the biggest alarm. And thankfully, because of that, I mean, our mayor also says, never let a crisis go to waste. And so since then, she's been at it. Together with myself, others, we've developed a governance structure. Since 1981, we haven't had a real Biscayne Bay watershed management plan. Really looking at water quality, managing in a very intentional way, implementing regulatory enforcement actions. That happened back in the 80s. Everything was fine. We had governance back then. We had a committee that was making sure that there was accountability and that the Bay and all these recovery efforts were moving forward. And then in the early 90s, that committee went away. Don't ask me why, I don't know. I keep asking, and I think it was just political. And since 1992, the Bay has had no watchdog, no entity, no governance really holding folks accountable. When I say folks, cities, citizens, developers, whoever. And that's why we've had this kind of like, empty time. And so when I said earlier that we should have started 20 years ago, that's exactly what I mean. So now we're on a fast track. We have not one governing structure. The state legislature came in and said we need state oversight also over Biscayne Bay. So I'm like, okay, great, I'll take the attention too, and your money. And so since 2020, we've been receiving over $60 million, I think now, and there's another 20 in this year's budget. So the state is involved. The federal government is also involved. EPA is providing us with a significant amount of funding and grants, resilience grants too. It's all kind of coming together. And even though this is fair and poor right now, I have hope because all of this attention, and we're finally moving forward. We're implementing policies that should have happened before, but they're happening now. We're updating our septic standards. We're getting people off septic systems in a prioritized manner. Those septic systems that are failing, we're getting them off, and we're paying for it. And folks are actually paying for it too. Other cities, city of Miami Beach is very progressive, and you guys have all your good campaigns and education and doing all the right things. Other cities, unfortunately, are a bit behind. So we're there lockstep. And so what we're doing is we're developing together with the Department of Environmental Protection and US EPA, we're setting nutrient reduction targets. We're trying to lower our nitrogen and our phosphorus because that's what creates the chlorophyll. I'm not a scientist, but I've hung out with you guys long enough, so I think I'm getting this right. That creates the algae that is basically killing the seagrass and creating climate change heat. That's another factor that's creating situations where every summer we've been seeing these fish kills. And I can sit here and tell you, I don't know, we might just have another one. It's sad to say until we don't start getting these levels right. But finding the sources of those pollution, that's why your work, doctor, is so important, finding those sources of pollution and really attacking the source with these projects and funding. So we're kind of all in this together. And that's kind of my message, and I'll stop there. I think I kind of covered a bunch of things.
But it's important to find out that there is action. There are shovels in the ground. We are connecting septic to sewer. There are things that, it's not just policy, but there is action happening.
And we're working with every city, all 34 municipalities from the county perspective.
And are they all on board? As Miami, I know obviously Miami Beach is leading the effort because obviously we're the biggest stakeholders here. Basically Miami Beach is nothing without Biscayne Bay, and I know that, I really commend the leadership of the administration and your work, Amy, also leading the charge here, but are the other cities also stepping up?
The cities, so we're starting in the northern part of the system. I always say, we need to stop the bleeding and then treat the disease, right? And so where we're seeing the worst of the worst, those cities, they're actually coming to us with their projects. Here's what we're doing. Making commitments to clean out their stormwater systems more than they have to. The state only requires cities to clean out their system every 3 years, and Dave and I are like, or five. I think they're going to 3 next with their update. But so we have cities that are making those commitments of cleaning them out every year. So going beyond what they're required to do. So I think everyone sees the urgency because we all know the environment here is the economy, right? So, and you know, we live in this beautiful paradise. So we have to, you know, invest in it in order to get that, you know, ultimate return.
And stormwater is such a big, huge factor, big, huge contributor. We saw that play out in Parkview. I just want to pivot to Amy right now because Parkview, is anybody here from Parkview? Anyone live in Parkview here? A couple of Parkview residents right here. So basically it's a microcosm of what we're seeing play out in Biscayne Bay, predominantly in the Northern Basin, and we're seeing this recurring pollution problem in Parkview, and the residents there can't seem to catch a break. I know that the city has been really focused on trying to find some solutions there. Doctor, your work was pivotal in trying to investigate exactly where that pollution is coming from. Amy, you're about to present your recommendations to the city. Has that happened yet? And what will be the action plan to try to remediate what we're seeing happening play out in Parkview?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to address this because it's important and it's very serious. You know, when I first started in this role and the way I really found out about Parkview was through residents saying, you know, what's happening here, what's going on, and I was kind of new into this director role. And the only information that I had was that there was a sewage break. There was documented extremely high bacteria levels. The levels never went away. The city tested. It showed there are other contributors such as dog waste and bird waste, and there was all this advanced testing done. And I don't think anyone really knew what to do because this had never been found before. Number one, we did a very advanced level of testing. And it's not information we had 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. So we don't really know, and thank you for saying it's a kind of a microcosm. This could be happening other places. And for us, you know, it was so alarming. And so we did bring, you know, Dr. Solo Gabriel on to say, where could this be coming from? Because as a city, we had done infrastructure testing. So our public works team, our engineering team did all sorts of testing from, you know, dye testing to putting cameras down the lines. They have longer term plans to upgrade the entire sanitary sewer system, but there was no obvious sign of a break, which would have been good because then it could have been fixed, right? Looking at the stormwater system, I mean, we have 81 acres of stormwater draining west into one tiny canal that is within a canal that is within Biscayne Bay. So there's very limited flushing and it's very shallow, and really there needs to be a lot of changes. So one of the things that we did right away, even before we knew what the source was, is we put in a capital budget request to our city commission. We asked for, you know, $6.5 million. We said we need to do studies in order to find out, you know, what's happening in there. We need to probably dredge that canal to get more flushing. We need to do advanced analysis to figure out what's going on. And we're gonna need to possibly do aeration, put bubblers in or something. We are going to need to upgrade this infrastructure faster. And so we did all of that last summer first, you know, really when I first became director. And all of that was accepted by our commission. I mean, there's been, you know, a big sense of acceptance that we have to move this along. So where we're at right now is that we will be starting studies to prepare for the dredging. We may start the dredging next year. Well, start applying, it's a process, a lot of permits, but that would begin to happen next year because we've asked for accelerated funding, and our city manager is putting that forward in her budget to bring forward. So that's very important. Number two, we did bring in about $10 million of Resilient Florida grant funding to start the design of the entire North Beach area. So it's very important to say this is not just Parkview, it's not just Parkview Island. This is, again, 81 acres draining west, all the way from Collins into this canal. So it's very unfair to say it's a Parkview Island issue. This is a North Beach issue. And so we got that $10 million for design. That design contract is, I believe it's all been signed and Public Works is working on that. But that's a longer term, like that's a complete redo. We have replaced air release valves already. And those could be a source of potential leakage. And we were so excited because we had, you know, some great results for a little while, that the results were so much better in the Parkview Canal. And then we had all those rains in March. And the rains came and the numbers just spiked right back up. So, you know, we were hoping it was that, but again, that stuff needed to be done. We have lined the sanitary sewer pipes, a lot of them up in that area, just as we await the bigger projects. And we're asking for more funding to design more pollution control equipment at the outfalls, and that will go to our city commission next month in May as a budget amendment so that that can happen as early as possible. So we're working really hard on it. It's top of mind, and we're all ears with what else to do.
Yeah, and that was your smoking gun, Dr. Solo Gabriel, right? You identified those 9 stormwater outfalls as it being the source of what was really polluting the waterways leading into Parkview. And where is that pollution source coming from? So we identified that there is no smoking gun as far as the sewage and infrastructure, but obviously the enteric oxide bacteria is finding its way into those outfalls. Where is it coming from? And could it be a drip, 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 even though there's not one big break, but one big rupture? Could there be a drip, drip, drip that's just, adding to the groundwater that is feeding that stormwater system, and that's where we're seeing those spikes come from?
Thank you for asking the questions. And in terms of the sources of contamination, we have not been able to identify a sewer contribution. However, we did, as mentioned by Amy, that after the repair of the air release valves during the dry period, we did see some amazing numbers in that canal. I was dumbfounded. I want to give a shout out to Surfrider. We were looking at their data. Yes. And they documented levels that I had never seen in a long time, down to detection limits, which was amazing. But it was a dry period. Then it rained in May. We had the big rain, the Fort Lauderdale issue we all know about. The numbers went back up. So it's definitely coming through the stormwater system. Now, what is contaminating the stormwater system? We know that all material that is on the streets gets washed in. And so any waste that's on the street, even trash, is a source of contamination. Dog waste. We also observed feral animals in the area, the iguanas and the raccoons. There are people who are feeding them. So they would also be a source of contamination. Garbage bins in the back of restaurants. If they're not covered, they will leak, and all of that leakage will also get into the storm system and then go straight into the canal. So, anything that's on the streets will end up in the canal. Also, unfortunately, and it's a more difficult societal issue, is homeless populations as well. The homeless, if they don't have access to sanitation facilities, if they don't have where to go, they're also a source of contamination, which also I believe the city of Miami Beach has been working with the populations and trying to find them adequate facilities to use. So yes, anything that's on the streets will definitely end up in the waterway. But one aspect that we are still wanting to explore further is we definitely see it in the stormwater system. We sample the water in the stormwater system. It's there at high levels, and then we see it flush out. Now, what is contaminating that stormwater? Is it the waste from the street, or is it maybe a slow leaking sewer source? We know it's fresh water. We have, the high levels are in the fresh, it floats on the top of the salt water, so that fresh water is the source, but sewage is fresh water, runoff is fresh water, and the next level is to really figure out.
DNA tests that we done any DNA tests on this water to find out what the source of bacteria is?
The DNA testing has been done by both City of Miami Beach and also by Surfrider, and they've identified, early on it was predominantly dogs, but now they're also identifying human sources. So, but more work needs to be done to really confirm where that human source is coming from. Is it local, from humans directly contaminating, or is it coming through the sewage?
And that our stormwater system is 80 years old, so and it hasn't really received the upgrading or the love or the attention that it needs. Dave, you've been working statewide on this issue. Can you update us on what's going on with the state and how we're going to hold our cities more accountable to clean and maintain their stormwater systems?
Yeah, so Irela kind of pointed to this a moment ago, where the requirements in the regulation are really insufficient. The EPA, under the Clean Water Act, delegates regulation down to the states. And so all of the regulatory agency that handles this is the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. They seem to operate under a least common denominator, right? They want everybody to achieve the goals, and so instead of giving stretch goals and forcing everybody to achieve them, they kind of create the rules so that everybody can achieve them, and they're not sufficient for population sizes like ours or communities like ours. And so I took a long shot, and Governor DeSantis in 2020, along with the legislature, passed the Clean Waterways Act, which basically told DEP to revisit our rules to deal with all of our tributaries, right? And how do we fix clean water across the state? There's not a single water body in the state of Florida that is in good condition. So let's not think that Biscayne Bay is alone in these yellow and red. Like, the entire water system in Florida is trashed, right? And so the Clean Waterways Act basically directed DEP to figure out what changes need to be done, and I've just been showing up everywhere I can to show them the problems that we're seeing down here. And fortunately, because I work in the marine debris space, it's a very visual and impactful problem that I can show through photos, and everybody can see what I'm seeing down here on the ground. And so now the state is going to be, I've seen a draft of the new stormwater permits, and they have heard the community, they have seen the problems, and they are going to improve them significantly. However, they are still not sufficient, right? And so what we passed at the county level was our own stormwater operations and permit manual. Our operations and maintenance permit, right? It's still kind of in the works, where we're going to be able to crank down or crank up the design and maintenance criteria for dealing with our stormwater systems. So, Louis.
But it's important to underscore that these are governed by the municipalities themselves.
Right.
They are operated by each of the cities, so there is no one overarching governing board over the stormwater system.
And that's part of the problem, right? We have 34 municipalities, and there's nobody providing the oversight and the coordination and the collaboration. We've got some amazing talent in South Florida when it deals with water quality, but when I started this, nobody was talking. Everybody was just saying, well, the state only requires us to clean the stormwater systems once every 5 years, and that's what we're going to do. And that was happening here in Miami Beach, right? And that all started changing with Mayor Levine at the time and that commission, who I remember when the mayor's Blue Water Task Force or something, a Blue Ribbon Panel, then Commissioner Grieco pulled me into this meeting, and I walk in with a couple of sopping bags full of trash, and I laid them on the table, and I'm like, hey, this is what's in our storm drain systems. This is part of what's causing our flooding. And that's when I discovered that they were only cleaning our storm drain systems once every 7 years, and that's insane, right? And our city has really stepped up and realized, okay, that's not going to work. And so, there's the road raisings, there's that we all can see, but there's new pollution control systems being built into those designs. And we are getting much better here in Miami Beach, but we've got City of Miami, which has miles and miles of coastline. Inland, whether you're out in Doral or Hialeah, all of that stormwater goes into the canals. Those canals drain into Biscayne Bay. And so, short any state or federal oversight, we need to do this work here. We need to take care of our own backyard. We need to make sure that we're doing not what the state tells us to do, but what we know needs to be done. And so I'm very grateful that Arella is helping put that together and giving the voice to the community and to the experts. To make stuff like this happen. There's a lot of people who care, but there was nobody driving the bus, so to speak.
Right. This sounds like a very heavy lift too, like capital improvements of upgrading our county's stormwater system, it's going to be slow and it's going to be expensive. So how do we pull the trigger on that? What needs to happen, Arella?
Well, it starts with coordination and communication and education, right? So what we did last year, right before the rainy season starts, we hosted a workshop, we being the county, our Department of Regulatory and Economic Resources, and DERM, which is our environmental Division of Environmental Management, myself, we invited all of our city managers and city public works directors to a workshop to talk about the rules that we're contemplating moving forward, policies that would impact, obviously, cities, and also get their input, and at the same time get their buy-in, right? And so understanding that just because the state requires us to do it every 5 years, we need to do more. And getting those commitments. And, interestingly enough, a lot of the cities have made those commitments on their own. They realize that because the public is asking for that. And so this is why groups like this are so important. This is why, when we're meeting in our advisory board and the public comes and speaks, provides public comment, I see a couple of our regulars in the audience, it's important. Our elected officials need to hear that what needs to be done. We elect them for a reason, and we need to elect the right people with the right missions. And so I'm very pleased to see that there's 3 commissioners that serve on our advisory board, and so county commissioners. And that's very impactful and significant because they're getting educated at the same time, they're hearing what the problems are, and they have firsthand ability to make change. And that's why I say governance is very important. And of course, data and science, because we can't make those decisions without knowing what the problems are, and this is what science is so important too.
And that's one of the big takeaways here tonight. Like, you have to be part of the process here. It's like we have an election coming up in 2 years, and you have to be able to do your homework and identify who are the Biscayne Bay advocates. Those are the people you have to vote for. Otherwise, nothing is going to happen. We need policymakers. We need people who understand the urgency is going to move this forward with the speed and scale at this moment in time is dictating. I want to move away. We can talk about stormwater systems. One of my favorite subjects. I don't want to drown in this rabbit hole, but if you can put a button on it, Amy, because I think when it comes to cities stepping up and doing more, when it comes to stormwater, Miami Beach leads the pack. We're addressing this with more frequency, and also are we moving in the direction of upgrading the stormwater system? We've raised a lot of the streets, especially in Sunset Harbor. We saw the big project that happened in Indian Creek, south of 41st Street, down 21st Street. Obviously, that was we've improved that, but we have a big city. Geographical area of other neighborhoods that haven't really received that love and attention. What's happening with that? And then we're going to move on and talk about mooring fields in a second, but I want you to address that real quick.
Okay, so I think everybody knows that we are a city in transition, right? Like most cities, we have aging infrastructure. We have very certain challenges facing us. Sea level rise. We are already vulnerable to storms, so it's not a huge surprise to us, but this is an additional threat. So the approach is, as we invest in this infrastructure, that we also prepare for this shock that's coming at us. We have information, we know this is happening, we have the sea level rise projections, and we have adopted them into our capital planning. But what is the hard part is actually doing it, right? We can know something, but how to get from what you know to what you need to do is how. And road elevation is an important part of that. We have elevated about 11 miles of roads on Miami Beach. The experts tell us we need to elevate about 50% of our roads to be safe and to be out of the water, over the next, 30, 40 years. So we have time, however, it is a big undertaking. As we do that, I think what's really important is that the water, we have to be very careful with the water. So we have to elevate to lift out of that groundwater because it's right underneath us, right? Miami Beach is like a porous sponge, and the groundwater is directly tied to the tides. So it's the same level as the ocean water, and we know that through a network of monitoring wells we have. So we do need to lift out of the water. In the same way newer homes are higher, we need to do that. But what about everything else that's still existing, right? How do we make that better, and how do we protect? as we're putting in these new stormwater systems, we're adding in water treatment systems. Miami Beach has about 48 pumps throughout the city now, and the newer generation ones have these compartmentalized systems. They have bar screens. They have vortex systems that is actually spinning garbage and sediments. There's a lot of cleaning that's happening before it's discharged into the bay. And that's a really great thing, because before it was all going right to the bay. And we only have 3% of the outfalls in Miami-Dade County. So if you can imagine us doing this work, could you imagine if all the municipalities and the county did all of this along the river, along the coastline? So that could be a huge impact. So I do believe we're moving in the right direction. I think it's going to take a lot of time, but did I answer?
And the frequency of the catch basin, we're cleaning them out how often now?
So our city cleans out everything once a year. The
And
environmental.
the requirement is once every
It's
7 years?
5 years.
5 years, okay.
So the environmental team, we have, everything is about teamwork, right? We have a holistic team in the city. And, I live it and breathe it every day. My team handles that NPDS reporting and works closely with the engineers and the operations team from Public Works to make sure that they do it. So we have a checks and balances. We prepare this report. We see all of the cleaning that's done. And with the new pollution control systems, actually, those have to be serviced even more frequently. And some of the areas that's high tourism, very active, from what I hear, it's once a month, sometimes once a week. And so you can go like right now to Sunset Harbor and we could pop that manhole and show you. So that is a good thing.
It is a good thing, and we're attacking it on the land, and even though the science tells us and the data tells us 80% of what we're seeing in the water is coming from land-based sources, there are also pollution problems in our waterways, and they're demonstrated in our bays, the harbors that we see outside our homes, in our communities, Sunset Harbor, the Hibiscus Island, and my God, what's the islands there? Palm Island, thank you, right across from what's now Jungle Island, and we see the huge problem that is infecting our bay, North Bay Village, Miami River, and that's the problem with derelict boats, and people weren't maintaining their boats. So one of the big solutions that we're implementing here is the implementation of a mooring field. I think we're going to start that off. We're looking at Sunset Harbor. Is that correct as the jump-off point for this? And so, Dave, can you explain why a mooring field is a good idea and how this can help us impact? Because a lot of these boats are not being maintained. A lot of them are they're homeless people living on these boats. They're not flushing out their boats the way they should be. All of that waste is going directly into the water, and it's a huge source of pollution. So talk to us about why mooring fields are essential and how we're lighting the fuse with this.
So imagine whatever you do at your house is now confined on a small boat, right? There are things that we all do every single day, and we got to do that somewhere. And so, what boaters are supposed to do is to hold all their stuff on the boat and then have that stuff pumped out, right? We don't have the facilities necessary in order to facilitate those pump outs. And so what do people do? Well, has anybody ever been camping and you have an RV and you're like, you notice the little gray tank and the little black tank getting a little full, so you crank it just a little bit, little drip, 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 drip. Well, guess what? That's what happens on boats, right? We do have a pump out facility at the marina on 3rd, right? But that costs a lot of money. We don't have a mobile pump out boat that goes around to each of those boats. We don't have any mobile facilities. So what people are required to do is to move their boat, take it over to the marina, pump out, and then move their boat back. But a lot of the boats that are in the bay are not, they're barely floating, let alone movable, right? They don't even have mobile capacity. But there are also a lot of people who that's a lifestyle, right? And the boats might be in perfectly fine shape. So we are restricted based on state law from regulating the bay. The county can't do it. The cities can't do it. We can't tell anybody can't park here, right? Like we do on the streets. unless we create a mooring field. If we create an area where people can legally tie to mooring balls, we can then control not only the mooring field area, but areas around it, right? And so, as other areas like Watson Island, the city of Miami installed the mooring field because they had a lot of boats that were just hanging out there, parked there forever and ever and ever. They have now created a mooring field, and they are now able to charge people for coming there, right? When you build something and define the rules within a space, then you can control it, right? If you don't create the space and you don't create any rules and you don't create any regulation, then whatever happens is going to happen. And so the concept of the mooring field is to give us the ability to design how boaters can use that space. And so the mooring field is going to go in 3 phases, from Sunset Harbor all the way down to the 5th Street Bridge, give or take, maybe 8th Street. I don't remember exactly. But that will give us the ability to control and regulate the space, as well as building the necessary facilities for boaters to treat the bay with respect, right? And so that would include pump-out stations, that would include on-land bathrooms and facilities and showers and laundry facilities. Like, look, this is a lifestyle for a lot of people. Anybody ever wanted to go, van lifing or RV lifing? It's the same thing, right? I dream about going and sailing around around St. John's in the Virgin Islands, right? And just living on a catamaran. Sounds super cool. But if we don't build the structures and the facilities for these folks to live this kind of lifestyle, then they're going to do whatever they want to do. And so this mooring field is a necessity because as City of Miami built their mooring field, they kicked out all those boats. Now, those boats are going to go somewhere. Where are they coming? They're going to come here, right? And so we have an opportunity to design how we want Biscayne Bay to be utilized in a proper and responsible way. One of the benefits of that is it's going to attract the kind of people who this is a lifestyle, not this is a life, right? Meaning, like, a lot of the people who live on some of these boats, they don't have other options, possibly. But if we create a space where we are charging, right? I don't want to create it as a revenue generator necessarily, but it funds the facilities. It can fund marine enforcement. It can fund a mobile pump-out station. Then we have an opportunity to design the space as we want it. And if we have a mobile pump-out that goes around, and that's included in the nightly or the weekly fee, then guess what? We can capture all that stuff and prevent it from going into Biscayne Bay. So I think the mooring field is critical, and one of the things that I am concerned about with the mooring field is that we're redesigning Maurice Gibb Park. I went to the ribbon cutting, and it's beautiful. It's going to be awesome, right? New kids' playground, all the facilities, right, that we're going to want as local residents, but it does not include the required. We haven't built in the plan for the facilities necessary for us to open a mooring field. City of Miami cannot open their mooring field because they have not thought ahead and built the facilities necessary, like bathrooms, like showers. And so we have to think through that, and I'm concerned that we're going to have this beautiful, wonderful park that's going to be open, and now we're like, oh, we haven't built the facilities necessary in order to open the mooring field legally. Right? So that's not it, like, hey, you should have this. No, that is a requirement of the mooring field.
Amy, is this your purview? Yes, love that. And is this happening, and what's the timetable, and have we looked into the upland necessities to be able to make this mooring field happen? I know that Sunset Harbor is like the test pilot.
Well, it was.
It was, okay.
And I think, like any major and important projects, these things take twists and turns, and they're an evolution to be done right, and in a way that really is accommodating of a lot of residential concerns. So where the mooring field is at now is, we are actually going to be seeking design and permitting approvals from Fifth Street to Sunset Harbor, as you said. And that's going to be about a 3-year process. And so we have selected the consultants to help us through that process. They're the same ones that helped us with the feasibility study. But we did take some time recently and met with all of the regulatory agencies to say, Miami Beach is considering this mooring field. What do you think about it? What are some things we should consider? What do you think about our boundaries? What is the best way to approach this? And that was really time and money well spent for us, because what they told us is a couple things. You have 4 phases in your feasibility study that was done. We do not want you to go phase by phase and piecemeal and come back to us every 2 years and ask for something else. If you're intending to do a broader mooring field, we would rather you get the permitting approvals at one time so that we can assess it all at one time. Time-wise, it's much faster. It's about, I want to say half the cost, but nearly half the cost. And it would allow us to look over the next 10 years how to phase this in. But to get those regulatory approvals earlier on, and also what that will allow us to do as a city is, you probably know we're not in the business of mooring fields, right? It's not something that we have done in the city before. So we have already been approached by interested entities that want to manage a mooring field. And we're going to have to go through a competitive process to have somebody that is qualified to do this. And they're going to have to do it in a way that keeps the costs low enough for the public. Biscayne Bay is, it's an aquatic preserve, so the lease fees are actually double because we're in Biscayne Bay as in other parts of the state. If we keep it as a non-revenue generating mooring field, the state will waive those lease fees. And so what we're interested in is a very well-managed waterway, a well-managed mooring field, almost similar to like a park, right? It's not a moneymaker, but it has enough funding to be managed properly. There's 2 requirements for the mooring field, as we heard from our consultants and the regulatory agencies. One is to have the sewage pump out, and another one is to have dinghy dock access. And those are the basic requirements. So we're interested in working and identifying if upland facilities are needed on a further basis. In terms of Marie Skip Park, that design and the park was done in advance of actual mooring field facilities. And if we did actual upland facilities, that would be a major change to a capital project that was already designed. So I don't know that the neighborhood really would have allowed that quite frankly. And I think that would have sent us back to the drawing board, which we don't want to do it because the permitting process is so long that we still have a lot of time to get the right boundaries and the right size mooring field and for our community. But we're going to learn along the way, right? This is new for us, and it's important, I think, just to get started and to get moving. And just a couple of things why it would be important for the environment also is that, right now what's happening is there's all this marine debris, right? And it's under the water, and, Merle, the mermaid, is here, and she sees it and tells us about it. Establishing the mooring field, we will be removing that marine debris, which is so much better for the health of the bay. We will be putting down those, mooring balls so that when people anchor, they're not dragging and killing all the seagrass that's there. There's going to be a management plan that would be adopted by our city commission to say how long people can be there, whether it's a certain percentage might be daily, a certain percentage might be monthly, maybe there's 6 months. And it can be structured in a way, it can have, lighting rules and noise rules in a way that would be acceptable, to the community. So that's the process. That's not a one and done. And everyone's mooring field is different across the state.
But this is something that the city can decide arbitrarily. It doesn't have to go to the electorate, correct? We don't have to bring this up. There doesn't have to be an ordinance posed to the electorate in order to make this happen. The city can just decide to have a mooring field without bringing it to the voters.
It needs to go to the city commission. Yeah, it's not a referendum item, but the city commission has already approved the design and permitting, and we have funding for that. But regulatorily, there's 4 major state regulatory agencies that do have a lot of say in the mooring field. And it actually goes up to the governor's cabinet.
Because a lot of residents have their opinions on this, and it's something that can be controversial depending on how different neighborhoods are impacted by this. That's why I wanted to know if there was any opportunity for residents to have their voices heard on this issue. Is this something that's just going to happen? And we've already greenlit this, and it is happening.
Yeah, and there will be a lot of opportunity for public input as well. There's going to be, a lot of public meetings held as the ordinance is developed. It's definitely not one and done, and it's about looking at that whole area and what makes the most sense moving forward.
And I just want to hear from the scientists really good. We've already kind of touched on this, but I want to hear from you, Doctor, as to how this is actually. I wouldn't call it a silver bullet, but I would call it something that could really be helpful in improving water quality that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, when it comes to waste, there's different, in fecal material, there's different levels. For example, dog fecal waste is not as infectious as human because we don't share as many diseases with dogs. But when it comes to human waste, we have to, that is like the extreme of what we need to take care of. And that sewage, that waste is not treated whatsoever. There's no treatment to it. So it's raw material that, and there are a lot of illnesses that are carried through waste, human waste, and that needs to be taken care of. I mean, to me, if it's an issue that it needs to be addressed regardless, and if I was trying to think who came up with the idea of the mooring field to be able to address the derelict boats, because I had never thought that it could be dealt with in this way. So I think it's a wonderful solution in terms of sanitation, public health.
It's a win-win.
Yes, exactly.
It's a big win-win. So another problem that we're seeing also play out in our waterways are a lot of these unregulated charters. And when I say charters, it's not just the party boats that we're seeing out there. They're adding to the marine debris. I mean, they're being completely reckless on the waters. I know because I've seen them, and many of them are right there across from the Fontainebleau. You see the whole big marina, so to speak, where they used to have the yacht show back in the day. And those charters aren't always kind to the bay, and you see the footprint that they leave behind. I know that Senator Diana Garcia has put forth legislation to address that with the, yes, you knew exactly where I was coming to. She's asking for the mic. So you guys know that right now Florida has experienced a boater boom, right? So since the pandemic, we now have over 1 million boats in the state of Florida. That's record breaking. We've never seen the amount of boats we have in the water right now. Add on top of that, these unregulated charters, and it's not just the boat, it's also the personal watercraft. How are we there's a lack of enforcement happening in our waters, right? We don't see the enforcement that we need to protect our waters from pollution, from bad behavior, and from bad actors. So how do we clamp down on that, and what is FWC's role in all this, Urella?
So out of those million, about 77,000 are registered here in Miami-Dade County. Think about that for a minute. And then we have the level of enforcement that we probably still had since the 1980s as far as how many officers we have addressing all sorts of other emergencies on the water, not necessarily dealing with these bad actors. And so yes, there's been a lot of it's like a wild, wild west out of there from what I hear. I mean, I'm out there too, but yeah, we see the jet ski operators. They skirt around the rules. So we're cracking down at the county level. What we've done is, again, fortunately, because we have an advisory board and because I'm very intentional about education, especially with our elected officials, they take them out on boats so they can see firsthand what's going on out there. And so as a result, we have a few commissioners developing right now legislation to curtail some of these commercial activities on the water. So policy is now being crafted to deal with that at the local level. As you mentioned, at the state level, we have a very supportive senator who grew up on the water. So she when she first got elected, I got a phone call and I'm like, well, I don't know you, but yeah, I'll talk to anybody who wants to help. And so she last year was able to pass the Boating Act, which started increasing fines and started increasing personnel of Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. The state, as Dave mentioned, is the authority out on the water on Biscayne Bay. Our Marine Patrol is limited. They can ticket, and they do. We've had many little operations with them, but they can't go that step further. The state is the one that has to. The state is also responsible for the removal of these derelict vessels. And we have too many, but they don't have enough manpower. So what the senator has asked for is to increase FWC's budget to allocate specifically for Miami-Dade County more personnel, because there isn't enough. And it has to be commensurate to the amount of boaters that we have here. It's just always unfair that, because we're all the way down here in Miami-Dade County, we basically fund a big portion of the state budget, but yet we don't get, what we put in. So and that's where advocacy comes in again. FWC is having a meeting in next month here in Miami. They rotate around the state. I think it's a good opportunity to bring these issues up. They're tired of hearing from me. I need armies of people, asking for this, because that will make change. I mean, it happened for us in 2017 when we put together that summit, and we had a huge community outcry on the bay is dying. So we've made some progress, but again, we can't kind of fall asleep at the wheel. And so my message to everyone is, please, participate, get involved, tell your friends. There's little things, Louis, you and I talk about it all the time. There's little things we can all do, right? I mean, not fertilize, pick up your dog waste. I mean, I don't have to tell this room because you're all doing the right thing for the bay, right? But we're blessed that we have such a diverse community with people that make Miami their home from different countries that have never really understood how vulnerable this ecosystem is. We live on an aquifer. I mean, we live, our water supply comes from nature. That is very unique to us. And so, it's very vulnerable. And so we have to educate people. And education for me, I can fix infrastructure with enough money. We can fix infrastructure, right? I can't fix people. And so we have to educate people in all languages. And so I don't know if you all walked in and saw that beautiful Biscayne Bay license plate. So encourage you to pre-purchase one, because we have to pre-sell 3,000 for the state to manufacture them. The funds go towards the Miami Foundation specifically to help with marketing and education. I want to see billboards educating people. I want to see commercials. I want to see Louis. I can't afford Louis right now, but I would hire Louis.
I'd do it for free.
A PSA for me. A PSA for me. So that's what we absolutely need. And I also want to help our nonprofit organizations like Volunteer Cleanup, Clean Miami Beach, Clean This Beach Up. I mean, you guys are out there every day and you need support. And so that aspect of bay recovery is incredibly important. I would say in my book, it's more important, not that all these other projects, because these projects are going to get done, but education never gets funded. I mean, I got a little funding last year from the commission. I'm not getting it this year, I'm hearing. So this is what's happening.
Yeah, we're seeing it on Miami Beach. Obviously, we see the beautiful public information campaign that was launched a few months ago. It's not just scoop the poop, but also don't fertilize during the rainy seasons. We see signage, we see messaging, pretty much citywide. That could increase, but it costs money. And what we're not seeing on TV, I grew up in the 70s, so I grew up with the crying Native American. Remember that commercial? What happened to him? What happened to Woods of the Owl? We're seeing the impact every single day. Sophie's back here. I saw MJ as surf rider is here. And obviously Merle the Mermaid, who again, another record-breaking swim. Let's give it up to Merle, and happy birthday, and thank you for everything you do. But I mean, come on. It is an embarrassing amount of marine debris and pollution that we're seeing littering our waterways on a consistent basis. And I don't know what else needs to be done to be able to wake people up to what it is that we're doing and the impact that this is having. Dave, do you want to take this for a second? Because how do we even begin to turn the water off? We keep, the analogy that we like to repeat often enough is that we're on the bottom floor of a 2-story house, and there's a leak coming from the upstairs bathroom, and we're busy mopping up the first floor, but no one bothered to go upstairs to turn off the faucet in the bathroom that's causing the leakage. So how do we even begin to even address this? And I want to talk about the resources at these organizations. This is not sustainable. These kids are out there every day with such passion and such consistency and such dedication. Every weekend they're hosting cleanups, sometimes 2-3 times a week. And as much as they clean up, there's even more to pick up the next day. The amount of debris that I see consistently on the Julia Tuttle, it's embarrassing. I am embarrassed by the people who live in this city who treat our waterways with such disrespect. Go ahead, Dave.
So when we do cleanups, we like to do a debrief at the end and talk about the solutions needing to fall within 3 groups: individual, business, and government. There's not a single silver bullet on this. So from an individual standpoint, first of all, come join us on a cleanup, right? Come see it firsthand. Like, we're not just some crazy hippies picking up a little bit of trash that some people leave around, right? I've got pictures of me with my kayak loaded down with 75 pounds of trash, right? And I'm, Dara's taking a picture of me and like there's barely room for me in the kayak. So the first thing is look within your own sphere of influence, right? Yourself, your family. Reduce consumption of single-use plastics. Put trash where it belongs. Ditch single-use plastics. Switch to aluminum. The second thing, and then look to see what you can do within the businesses that you support. Can you talk to your businesses about eliminating single-use plastic? 6 years ago, we don't have a lot of the same problems because in 2015, 2016, led by Michael Grieco, we banned styrofoam throughout the entire city of Miami Beach. Huge, right? We are the only city in the state of Florida that will ever be able to ban styrofoam and polystyrene because the state has gone and preempted everybody else from regulating that, right? Plastic bags, everybody says, oh, why don't we ban plastic bags? Well, because there's a statewide preemption. So everybody else just has to talk to businesses. We've said, look, you can't do that. Which leads me to government. We have an election coming up in November for our mayor. We have elections coming up in Miami Beach for commissioners. I ask and implore each of you to ask what their plan is for Biscayne Bay. Let them tell you. We've got some great candidates. I've met with almost all of them. I think they're wonderful people, and I think they all have a plan. But we need to tell them that Biscayne Bay is our priority. This is what we're going to vote for, so you better figure it out, right? So I'm very grateful to MBU for this opportunity to talk about Biscayne Bay and giving a platform for the elected officials. I see on everybody's chairs, everybody's leaving placards here, so that's fantastic, right? We need to hold all of them to account, both elected and those who want to be elected. Ask them what they're going to do. This includes our state representatives who are asking for our vote. This includes our federal representatives. So we all have a role to play in this, and we all have a lot more power and a lot more voice than we might think we do. We vote with our wallet, and we vote with our feet, and we vote at the polls.
And a lot of these policies are set at the state level. I don't know if you guys are keeping score, what's happening in Tallahassee or what happened this legislative session, but they are removing more and more power away from the local municipalities to be able to govern ourselves. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, you are dead wrong. Get involved and realize that your vote is power, and we need to put the people in place right now who see this as an urgent and pressing issue that it is right now. So please, please, please do not discount the power of your vote, and pay attention not just to the sexy federal elections, but also what's happening in the state is so important, especially right now in this moment in time. We talk a lot about our lifestyle and our economy, that Biscayne Bay is the linchpin to all of this, but really it all boils down to health. And we touched on the aquifer, and yes, we're a city that sits on porous limestone, so the water is right there. We're at sea level here. And as the bay goes, so goes our water supply. As the sea rises, so goes our water quality and our freshwater drinking water, our aquifer. I want to turn to the doctor right now to talk about how pressing this problem is and if our aquifer is going to be compromised and where we stand with that and how pressing this is and why we should all be concerned about the state of our water right now.
Yeah, we're so fortunate in Dade County that we have a high-quality freshwater aquifer called the Biscayne aquifer. It is the most transmissive aquifer in the world, meaning that if you pull a little bit of vacuum, you get a lot of water. So the analogy that I use is, for example, if you're trying to drink a glass of water with a straw versus a milkshake with a straw. Our aquifer is like drinking a glass of water with a straw, just a little bit of suction and you get a lot of water. And it's so valuable because we are the biggest groundwater sourced water supply in the world. So yes, they pump hundreds of millions of gallons of water from the Biscayne aquifer. We are so lucky to have it. The aquifer gives us benefits because it's protected versus most big cities have rivers where they draw their water from. A river is very susceptible. It's open to the atmosphere. All the contaminants, there's very little protection, whereas our aquifer is protected. And so we need to pay special attention to that. There are concerns in terms, a couple concerns. One has to do with contamination from, for example, septic tanks. In the mainland of Miami-Dade County, we have a lot of septic tanks. And with sea level rise, and the sea has been rising, we've been losing the treatment that our natural soil will give to protecting the aquifer. The way the septic tanks work is you have the sewage go from a home, individual home goes into a box, and from that box it then goes into what's called a drain field, which then leaks out into the ground, and then it goes into the aquifer. And that distance between the leach field and the groundwater with sea level rise is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and we're getting less and less treatment. So we're actually contaminating as time goes on because the sea level is going up. We're getting more and more contamination of our aquifer. And so one area that really is a focus, and I know Arella referred to it earlier, there is a big master plan to eliminate a lot of the septic tanks in Miami-Dade County, and that would greatly help in protecting our aquifer. But also with sea level rise, we have the ocean, and the ocean is salt water. And so we constantly have the ocean now pressing on the east side and moving back up into our aquifer area, which is where we're drawing our water from. And so also with sea level rise, the ocean is overpassing and pushing back into the groundwater, again, contributing to some losses of our aquifer. And then thirdly, if we pump too much water from our aquifer, if we have the population is growing, we're going to be depleting the aquifer, and it's not going to be able to replenish itself as it should. So our aquifer is very precious. We're very fortunate to have the Biscayne aquifer and to be able to serve such a large community with a groundwater source is truly a blessing that we have in this area.
So I think we painted a picture as to what it is that we're dealing with as residents of Miami-Dade County and how important it is that we have the proper leadership to advance and move this forward with the urgency that it dictates right now. I want to do one last round robin with our illustrious panel, the takeaway they want you to take home with you, because as I said at the beginning, we are all part of the solution, not passively. We have to be active in being part of the solution. And I want everyone here on the panel to spell out what that means and how everyone in this room can take that and go home with the action that they pledge to take right now in this room, in this space, to move this mission forward. I'm going to start with Arella, and we're going to go down the line.
Well, I want to end with why land use is important and land use decisions, particularly, and Louis, you did some reporting on Everglades restoration. And Everglades restoration and the aquifer and the salinity and saltwater intrusion that could be coming from sea level rise into that southern portion of Biscayne Bay down south by Biscayne National Park is critical. And so when there's all these you know, when there's these attempts at moving the urban development boundary line, it is complete, and it's completely opposite to what we're trying to do when we're trying to rehydrate those wetlands with fresh water to keep that salt water out. And when we have billions of dollars being spent by the federal government on Everglades restoration, it doesn't look good when a county, government makes a move like that. And so I'm bringing that up more as a citizen than my position, even though our mayor vetoed that vote, by the commission, sometimes, this is why education is very important. But personally, as a citizen, it's very, very, it's not some like imaginary line that they just decided to draw for no reason. It's to really protect our well fields and our aquifer, our water supply. When that goes, there's no point in living here. You're not gonna be able to afford buying the water that we're gonna have to make to still be around here. So again, I leave you with get involved, educate yourselves, and elect the right people.
And amplify and tell your friends. Have these conversations. Sometimes they're uncomfortable conversations to have, but they have to be had. Amy, how can we help you? You do so much here at the city. We're all residents of Miami Beach, so how do we lift you up? How do we amplify your mission?
Well, one very simple thing, and Irela handled the heavy stuff, and I love working with her day in and day out. And just so you know, we all know each other. And we meet at least once a month to talk through making Biscayne Bay a priority at our Resilient 305 meetings. We text, we call, and we really are all in this together. And I would love it if everyone here would take a pledge to protect Biscayne Bay. We have a We Heart Biscayne Bay campaign. Lindsay over here has the QR code if you want to scan and take it. But it basically means that you're going to do a few things. You're going to pledge to be fertilizer free, especially during the rainy months, and follow those rules, because that's going to reduce our pollutant load into the bay. We're going to ask that you please don't be rough on the bay. Clean up after your pets. Please encourage your neighbors to do so as well. It's a really big deal. And encourage you not to be trashy, and I'm sure nobody here is trashy. But, just the issue of garbage is just huge. And one thing I didn't mention is that we have waterway contractors that go out and clean up garbage 3 times a week from our canals and all around Miami Beach. And they got, I think, about 80,000 tons or pounds of trash last year. It's just a lot that's already in the waterways. So I think anything that we can all do, whether it's, choosing not to have those balloons at your outside party, whether it's, please petitioning our businesses that are plastic-free Miami Beach. We just had somebody come to us from Georgia and said, I visited Miami Beach and I cannot believe I couldn't find any plastic straws. What are you guys doing? And they took our entire ordinance and they're modeling it, and we were so proud of that. So we've also done a lot. So I just encourage you, take that pledge, tell your neighbors about it, and focus on that individual action. And buy a license plate for Irela.
Please buy a license plate. But you'd be surprised how many, I spoke at my homeowners association, the Pine Tree and LaGorce homeowners association recently, and you'd be surprised how many involved homeowners had no idea about the impact of fertilizer. As often as I'm speaking about this on television, as often as brought up, there's still a lot of your friends and neighbors who don't know, who aren't aware. So it's important to have these conversations. It does make for interesting dinner party talk. I'm just kidding. It really does.
And I
Go
forgot,
ahead.
I forgot
Yeah.
one thing. If you're concerned about keeping your hopefully native and Florida-friendly plants healthy, please sign up for our composting hubs. So Miami Beach has 2 composting hubs, one at the Botanical Gardens, one in North Beach. We were there this morning doing an Arbor Day tree planting, and it's a phenomenal opportunity for free to drop off your compost and drop off your stuff from your kitchen. Sorry, it's been a long day. And pick up that fresh compost and use it. And sometimes we have events because there's so much compost, and that will provide, everything that you need. So also be a composting family. Please
Yeah, and when you're landscaping, use native plants because they don't need maintenance, and it's cheaper for you, and they don't need as much water, and they're used to our weather patterns here. It really is the way to go. The don't be trashy, don't take that for granted. I live in a beautiful street on Miami Beach. Every morning when I walk my dogs to the beach, I pick up trash. Scott, you see me. You witnessed me do that. I pick up stuff every single day. So it's not the tourists, because if I don't live in a touristy area, we all like to point the fingers at the tourists. No, it's our friends and it's our neighbors. These conversations are difficult, but they need to be had. Dave.
I could talk about this for an hour on what everybody should be doing.
And we have.
And we have. All right, first of all, when I walked in, look, I've supported MBU for years, and my name wasn't on the list, and I paid my $25 due to renew my membership, right? Yeah, right? And I'm sure everybody else has here. The license plate is like $33. It's not a lot of money. I mean, it's a good amount of money, but it is the same that we pay here.
2 copies at Starbucks.
Right? So outside, I implore every one of you to stop, take a picture of the QR code, and just pre-order your license plate. It's one of Irela's big, ideas. It's a wonderful project. The license plate is cool, right? You go and you get to go around just like that bumper sticker on your car that says, whatever, coexist and cool stuff. You get to show that you love Biscayne Bay. It's got Stiltsville on it and a mangrove. It's cool. I can't wait to get mine. So please just go scan that QR code. Along with what I said earlier, which is to ask all of your all of the people who are asking for your votes. And I have 2 rules that I follow, right? I left my corporate gig 2 years ago to focus on my advocacy, and so I do this full time. I have 2 rules. I have a lot of things, but rule number 1 is always show up. Rule number 2 is never go away.
And he doesn't.
And I know.
He's at everything. Seriously, you turn on the channel at Miami-Dade Gov, and there's a commission meeting, and there's Dave Dobler at the microphone. You turn on the City of Miami Beach TV, there's Dave Dobler. You go to any cleanup around Miami, there's Dave Dobler. Y'all should feel a lot of love and appreciation for the work that this man does, and his love and dedication to Biscayne Bay. So, Dave,
Thank you.
we are because of your leadership.
So, and by the way, I sometimes give our staff and elected officials a hard time, right? Because I get frustrated, but it's important, and it's not personal, and so I want to show my appreciation to Amy, to Lindsay, to Aguirre, because I do give them a hard time. They are good humans, and there's a lot of really good humans doing good stuff. So my ask is for you to show up as well, because I can show up, and Sophie and MJ and Merle can show up, and Steve and Mike or Scott and Mike can show up, but we need more people showing up to the Biscayne Bay Watershed Management Advisory Board. Because when the elected officials, and Commissioner Mickey Steinberg sits on this, she was just appointed to sit on this, and she handles Mid-Beach North as our county commissioner. When we show her and we show the other commissioners that we show up for Biscayne Bay, they're going to make it a priority. So, a lot of people are going to be asking for your vote. They're asking for your support. They want, so tell them that and demand action on Biscayne Bay. Come join us on a cleanup. Come just show up and don't leave.
There you go. Hard act to follow, doctor, but they always say follow the science, right? So scientists, lead us the way. What is the science telling us about this moment in time and how we have to step up?
In hearing all of this, the picture that comes to my mind, the saying that comes to my mind is, how do you eat an elephant? Because contamination of the environment is like a huge elephant, and it's really one bite at a time. Not one thing is going to solve the entire problem. So we have to come up with our whole long laundry list. We have to be individually. We have to do our own part. As mentioned, the businesses have to do their part. The government has to do its part. I learned today that about the moorings. I think that's that's another item that's to be added to the list, but we have to have this huge list of all the things that need to be done so that we can then start marking those off and eliminating all these different sources. Yes. And so,
We have a
so-
list.
Yeah, so, but the big ones, in my opinion, the big ones are storm sewer upgrades, making sure our sanitary sewage is taken care of, eliminating septic tanks where possible. The canal discharges are huge impacts to the Biscayne Bay as well. If there anything that can be done to eliminate the pulses of contaminants that are coming through, would greatly help the bay. So again, I'm thinking of this, all these things that we can do, and we need to attack it from all different angles in order to come up with a resolution within a period of time before we get the next fish kill. So, thank you.
Sirens in the background, that's perfect. Yes, this is a 5-alarm fire, guys. I want to thank our panel, Dr. Helen Solo-Gabriel, thank you for being here, Dave Dobler, Amy Knowles, and Irela Baguette. Give it up for our panel. Thank you, Tanya, for asking me to do this. There you are. Thank you. We had a conversation about Parkview a few months ago, and you said, please do this. I said, okay, where do you need me, what time? I'm here, and thank you all for showing up and for caring, because we need each and every one of you. Together we can, we will, and we must save Biscayne Bay. Good night, everybody. Thank you.